Hey, good looking squirrels, what you got cooking? I ain't got my face on yet today. I was supposed to have gone for my consult for the colonoscopy, but something's going on with my van. Oh, brother, not again. Anyway, I'll have to reschedule. Here we go. The folks in the boat people, had found this family. And remember, the little fella was talking. He sounded like me. Is she sick now? Oh, ain't she? All that. Let's see. Ain't you seen her? Don't you want to? Would she like it? She admires to see folks and ask about you at dinner, so I guess you'd better go see her. Look a here. You like them spoons, and I'm going to give you one. I'd give you all of them if they wasn't promised. I can make one more in time, so you just take your pick, 'cause I like you and want you not to forget me. Sylvia chose St. John because it resembled more, she thought, bespoke and paid for a whole set, and privately resolved to send tools and rare woods to the little artist that he might serve his mother in his own pretty way. Then Nat took up his crutches and hopped nimbly before her to the room where a plain, serene-faced woman lay knitting. With her best cap on, her clean handkerchief and large green fan laid out upon the coverlet. This was evidently the best room of the house, and as Sylvia sat talking to the invalid, her eye discovered many traces of that refinement which comes through the affections. Nothing seemed too good for daughter Patience. Birds, books, flowers, and pictures were plentiful here, though visible nowhere else. 2 easy chairs beside the bed showed where the old folks often sat. Abel's home corner was there by the antique desk covered with farmers' literature and samples of seeds. Phoebe's work basket stood in the window. Nat's lathe in the sunniest corner, and from the speckless carpet to the canary's clear water glass, all was exquisitely neat. For love and labor were the handmaids who served the helpless woman and asked no wages but her comfort. Sylvia amused her new friends mightily for finding that neither mother nor son had any complaints to make, any sympathy to ask. She exerted herself to give them what they both needed, and kept them laughing by a lively recital of her voyage and its mishaps. "Ain't she prime, Mother?" was Nat's candid commentary when the story ended, and he emerged red and shiny from the pillows where he had burrowed, with boyish explosions of delight. "She's very kind, dear, to amuse 2 stay-at-home folks like you and me who seldom see what's going on outside 4 walls. You have a merry heart, miss, and I hope you will keep it all your days, for it's a blessing thing to own." "I think you have something better, a contented one," said Sylvia, as the woman regarded her with no sign of envy or regret. "I ought to have. 9 years on a body's back can teach a sight of things that are wuth knowing. I've learnt patience pretty well, I guess, and contentedness ain't fur away, and though it sometimes seems rather long to look forward to, perhaps 9 more years layin' here, I just remember it might have been wuss, and if I don't do much now, there's all eternity to come." Something in the woman's manner struck Sylvia as she watched her softly beating some tune on the sheet with her quiet eyes turned toward the light. Many sermons had been less eloquent to the girl than the look, the tone, the cheerful resignation of that plain face. She stooped and kissed it, saying gently, "I shall remember this." "Hooray! There they be, I hear Ben." And away clattered Nat, to be immediately absorbed into the embraces of a swarm of relatives, who now began to arrive in a steady stream. Old and young, large and small, rich and poor, with overflowing hands, or trifles humbly given, all were received alike. all hugged by Grandpa, kissed by Grandma, shaken half breathless by Uncle Abel, welcomed by Aunt Patience, and danced round by Phoebe and Nat till the house seemed a great hive of hilarious and affectionate bees. At first the strangers stood apart, but Phoebe spread their story with such complimentary additions of her own that the family circled opened wide, and took them in at once. Sylvia was enraptured with the wilderness of babies, and leaving the others to their own devices, followed the matrons to Patience's room, and gave herself up to the pleasant tyranny of the small potentates who swarmed over her as she sat on the floor, tugging at her hair, exploring her eyes, covering her with moist kisses, keeping up a babble of little voices more delightful to her than the discourse of the flattered mammas who benignly surveyed her admiration in their offspring's prowess. The young people went to romp in the barn. The men, armed with umbrellas, turned out in mass to inspect the farm and stock, and compare notes over pig pens and garden gates. But Sylvia lingered where she was, enjoying a scene which filled her with a tender pain and pleasure, for each baby was laid on Grandma's knee, its small virtues, vices, ailments, and accomplishments rehearsed, its beauties examined, its strength tested, and the verdict of the family oracle pronounced upon it, as it was cradled, kissed, and blessed on the kind old heart which had room for every care and joy of those who called her mother. It was a sight the girl never forgot, because just then she was ready to receive it. Her best lessons did not come from books, and she learned one then as she saw the fairest success of a woman's life, while watching this happy grandmother with fresh faces framing her withered one, daughterly voices chorusing good wishes in the harvest of half a century of wedded life, beautifully garnered in her arms. The fragrance of coffee and recollections of Cynthia's joyful aberrations at such periods caused a breaking up of the maternal conclave. The babies were borne away to simmer between blankets until called for. The women unpacked baskets, brooded over teapots, and kept up a harmonious clack as the table was spread, with pyramids of cake, regiments of pies, quagmires of jelly, snowbanks of bread, and gold mines of butter, every possible article of food, from baked beans to wedding cake, finding a place on that sacrificial altar. Fearing to be in the way, Sylvia departed to the barn, where she found her party in a chaotic babel, for the offshoots had been as fruitful as the parent tree, and some 4 dozen young immortals were in full riot. The bashful roosting with the hens on remote lofts and beams, the bold flirting or playing in the full light of day, the boys whooping, the girls screaming, all effervescing as if their spirits had reached the explosive point and must find vent in noise. Mark was in his element, introducing all manner of new games, the liveliest of the old, and keeping the revel at its height. For rosy, bright-eyed girls were plenty, and the ancient uniform universally approved. Warwick had a flock of lads about him, absorbed in the marvels he was producing with knife, stick, and string, and more, a rival flock of little lasses, breathless with interest in the tales he told, 1 on each knee, 2 at each side, 4 in a row on the hay at his feet, and the boldest of all with an arm about his neck and a curly head upon his shoulder. For Uncle Abel's clothes seemed to invest the wearer with a passport to their confidence at once. Sylvia joined this group and partook of a quiet entertainment with as childlike a relish as any of them, while the merry tumult went on about her. The toot of the horn sent the whole barn full streaming into the house like a flock of hungry chickens, where by some process known only to the mothers of large families, everyone was wedged close about the table, and the feast began. This was none of your stand-up wafery bread and butter teas, but a thorough-going sit-down supper, and all settled themselves with a smiling satisfaction, prophetic of great powers and equal willingness to employ them. A detachment of half-grown girls was drawn up behind Grandma as waiters. Sylvia insisted on being one of them and proved herself a neat-handed Phyllis, though for a time slightly bewildered by the gastronomic performances she beheld. Babies ate pickles, small boys sequestered pie with velocity that made her wink. Women swam in the tea, and the men, metaphorically speaking, swept over the table like a swarm of locusts, while the host and hostess beamed upon one another and their robust descendants with an honest pride which was beautiful to see. That Mr. Wackett ain't eat scarcely nothing. He just sits looking round kinder mazed like. Do go and make him fall to on something, or I shan't take a mite of comfort in my victuals, said Grandma as the girl came with an empty cup. He's enjoying it with all his heart and eyes, ma'am, for we don't see such fine spectacles every day. I'll take him something he likes and make him eat it. Sakes alive, be you to be Miss Wackett? I'd no idea of it, you look so young. Nor, I guess they're just talking about Warwick Wackett. No, nor I. We are only friends, ma'am. Oh, and the monosyllable was immensely expressive as the old lady confided a knowing nod to the teapot, into whose depths she was just then peering. Sylvia walked away wondering why persons were always thinking and saying such things. As she paused behind Warwick's chair with a glass of cream and a round of brown bread, he looked up at her with his blandest expression, though a touch of something like regret was in his voice. Ugh, got a wet whistle. This is a sight worth living 80 hard years to see, and I envy that old couple as I never envied anyone before. To rear 10 virtuous children, put 10 useful men and women into the world, and give them health and courage to work out their own salvation, as these honest souls will do, is a better job done for the Lord than winning a battle or ruling a state. Here is all honor to them. Drink it with me. He put the glass to her lips, drank what she left, and rising placed her in his seat with a decisive air which few resisted. You take no thought for yourself and are doing too much. Sit here a little and let me take a few steps where you have taken many. He served her, and standing at her back, bent now and then to speak, still with that softened look upon the face, so seldom stirred by the gentler emotions that lay far down in that deep heart of his, for never had he felt so solitary. All things must have an end, even a family feast, and by the time the last boy's buttons peremptorily announced, "Thus far shall thou go, and no farther," all professed themselves satisfied, and a general uprising took place. The surplus population were herded in parlor and chambers, while a few energetic hands cleared away, and with much clattering of dishes and wafting of towels, left Grandma's spandy clean premises as immaculate as ever. It was dark when all was done, so the kitchen was clear, the candles lighted, Patient's door set open, and little Nat established in an impromptu orchestra composed of a table and a chair, whence the first squeak of his fiddle proclaimed that the ball had begun. Everybody danced, the babies stacked on patients' bed or pinned behind chairs, sprawled and pranced in unsteady mimicry of their elders. Ungainly farmers, stiff with labor, recalled their early days and tramped briskly as they swung their wives about with the kindly pressure of the hard hands that had worked so long together. Little pairs toddled gravely through the figures or frisked promiscuously in a grand conglomeration of arms and legs. Gallant cousins kissed pretty cousins at exciting periods and were not rebuked. Mark wrought several of these incipient lovers to a pitch of despair by his devotion to the comeliest damsels, and the skill with which he executed unheard of evolutions before their admiring eyes. Moore led out the poorest and the plainest with a respect that caused their homely faces to shine, and their scant skirts to be forgotten. Warwick skimmed his 5 years' partner through the air in a way that rendered her speechless with delight, and Sylvia danced as she never danced before, with sticky-fingered boys, sleepy with repletion, but bound to last it out, with rough-faced men who paid her paternal compliments, with smart youths who turned sheepish with that white lady's hand in their big brown one, and one ambitious lad who confided to her his burning desire to work in a sawmill and marry a girl with black eyes and yellow hair. While perched aloft, Nat bowed away till his pale face glowed, till all hearts warmed, all feet beat responsive to the good old tunes which have put so much health into human bodies and so much happiness into human souls. At the stroke of 9, the last dance came. All down the long kitchen stretched 2 breathless rows, Grandma and Grandpa at the top, the youngest pair of grandchildren at the bottom, and all between, fathers, mothers, uncles, aunts, and cousins, while such of the babies as were still extant bobbed with unabated vigor as Nat struck up the Virginia reel, and the sturdy old couple led off as gallantly as the young one who came tearing up to meet them. Away they went, Grandpa's white hair flying in the wind, Grandma's impressive cap awry with excitement, as they ambled down the middle and finished with a kiss when their tuneful journey was done, amid immense applause from those who regarded this as the crowning event of the day. When all had had their turn and twirled till they were dizzy, a short lull took place, with refreshments for such as still possessed the power of enjoying them. Then Phoebe appeared with an armful of books, and all settled themselves for the family sing. Sylvia had heard such fine music, but never any that touched her like this, for though often discordant, it was hearty, with that undercurrent of feeling which adds sweetness to the rudest lay, and is often more attractive than the most florid ornament or faultless execution. Everyone sang as everyone had danced, with all their might. Shrill children, soft-voiced girls, lullaby-singing mothers, gruff boys, and strong-lunged men. The old pair quavered, and still a few indefatigable babies crowed behind their little coops. Songs, ballads, comic airs, popular melodies, and hymns came in rapid succession, and when they ended with that song which should be classed with sacred music for association's sake, and standing hand in hand about the room with the golden bride and bridegroom in their midst, sang "Home." Sylvia leaned against her brother with dim eyes and a heart too full to sing. Still standing thus, when the last note had soared up and died, the old man folded his hands and began to pray. It was an old-fashioned prayer, such as the girl had never heard from the bishop's lips. Ungrammatical, inelegant, and long, a quiet talk with God, manly in its straightforward confession of shortcomings, childlike in its appeal for guidance, fervent in its gratitude for all good gifts, and the crowning one of loving children. As if close intercourse had made the two familiar, this human father turned to the divine as these sons and daughters turned to him, as free to ask, as confident of a reply as all afflictions, blessings, cares, and crosses were laid down before him, and the work of 80 years submitted to his hand. And I think I'm going to stop right there. We're just about at 20 minutes. Alrighty, I hope to see you live at 5 today. Be sweet, don't be ugly. Bye-bye.